Hello, everyone. Welcome to our interview series, Counterattack, featuring the struggle of the people against U.S.-led war and militarism, a narrative that is left out of Western media. Counterattack aims to dispel the lies of U.S. and Western media outlets by talking to people directly in resistance against U.S. militarism. Through these conversations, we hope more people will be inspired to join us in fighting for a genuine, just peace. I'm Rhonda, and I am joined by my co-host, Victor. We are representing the Resist U.S.-led war movement global secretariat. Resist is an international network of pro-peace and anti-war organizations united under the principles of resisting U.S.-led war and building just peace. Today, we have the honor to have as our guest on Counterattack, Mr. Abbas Milhem with the Palestinian Farmers Union. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for organizing this, and it's my pleasure joining you.
Great. It's our honor. To start, would you please just introduce yourself and the work of the Palestinian Farmers Union? We know from your website that PFU describes itself as being in steadfast in defending farmers' rights, building strong farmer organizations, and promoting sustainable agricultural development, and how these efforts are part of the broader aspiration for an independent, democratic Palestinian state. So if you could just share with us about the history of the Palestinian Farmers Union, when it started and why, and some of your current work.
Yeah, thank you, Randa. And as you just mentioned, the union is being established around the main idea of defending the rights of farmers and for bringing their voice stronger to be heard by decision makers within the Palestinian context and against all the crimes and the attacks that target the agriculture sector and target the food security entirely in Palestine. The union was established just 1 year before the Oslo agreements, the Oslo talks and negotiations between Palestinian Liberation Movement, PLO, in 1994 when they signed the agreement, and the Israeli side. With these talks were facilitated by different international, bodies and agencies, led to the signature of the Oslo Accords or Oslo Agreement in Oslo in Norway in 1994. The union was established 1 year before that, 1993, as a movement of farmers who are, fighting for their rights and for their rights to access the land and be able to cultivate the land and get access to their natural resources, on top of which would be water. Because as you know, water and land are the two main resources for producing food. Without water, without land, the production of food is becoming, very challenging, which is what we are, witnessing now. From 1993, along until the early of 20th and later, most of the focus of the union was on lobbying and advocating for better responsive agricultural policies that would respond bitterly and positively for farmers' rights and the need of the agriculture sector and food security for, prosperity and expansion and protection. However, following the Oslo Agreement, where most of Palestinian farmers thought that their dreams of peace is coming true and that there is a peace agreement, where in 5 years from the time of signing that agreement, Palestinians would have the right for self-determination, for declaring and having their independence, and which will allow all farmers to get access to their natural resources, water and land. But unfortunately, what happened, that Israeli occupation and the Israeli government that is occupying power of Palestine benefited from this period, from this 5-year peace agreement, transitional period agreement, to confiscate more land, expand the settlement, and this was done on the benefit of the land owned by Palestinian farmers. Just a small example here. When Oslo Agreement was signed, the total number of settlers in Palestine was less than 150,000 settlers. Now, currently, we're having 750,000 settlers. The entire settlements in Palestine until Oslo Agreement was occupying almost less than 1% of the entire West Bank area. Now, the settlement, including the new pastoral settlement approach, this most extremist Israeli government has adopted as a policy, is occupying almost 24% of the entire West Bank area. According to Oslo Agreement, unfortunately, land in Palestine was divided into three categories: Area A and Area B and Area C. And I assume that you may hear a lot about these three categories of the land. Area A is the housing areas in the cities, and it is under the full authority of the Palestinian Authority in 1994. While Area B is the towns and villages, the housing areas of the towns and villages, which was the authority in this land was shared between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli occupation. Civil issues were under the Palestinian Authority control, while security issues under the Israeli control. However, both Area A and Area B, they formed only 39% of the entire West Bank area. The remaining 61 area was categorized as Area C under the full control of the Israeli occupation. And this area, it is the most fertile soil area. It is the farmland area. Our storage of water resources and farmland areas for food security and food production was all concentrated in that area. And unfortunately, Palestinians were expecting, after 5 years of the Oslo Agreement that was signed, they thought that they would have the full control over the entire Palestinian area, including sea area. But what happened was the opposite exactly. Israel expanding the settlements and settler deployment in West Bank in Area C from 1994 until now. And as I mentioned, the number of settlers jumped from to almost 5 times, 500 times from 1994 and until now, which means that more farmland area that was owned by Palestinian farmers was confiscated for the sake of settlers and settlement expansion. Most of our water resources located in this area, which is 87.5% of our water resources, are all located under the full control of Israeli authorities that gave the access only for settlers and settlement, denying the right of Palestinians to get access to any water resources in Area C. This made the lives of farmers hectic and very challenging. And here our work as a union expanded not to be only on national influencing issues, but also on international influencing issues to hold this occupation accountable against all the crimes and the attacks and the restrictions they impose on our farmers to get access to their land. And to expand these settlements, large areas of farmland areas that were occupied and cultivated by Palestinian farmers was destroyed, damaged, and thousands of Palestinians were forcibly displaced and kicked out from their lands for the sake of settlement and settler expansion. Here, our work as a union became more challenging in how we support the resilience of our farmers, how we make them stay in their land by providing them the minimum resources they need in order to continue farming the land, cultivating the land, and producing food to contribute to the food security in Palestine in general. At the same time, running and organizing solidarity campaigns and doing, international advocacy and lobbying with our solidarity movements and partners, trying to pressure them to impose pressure on their governments who can impose pressure on the Israeli occupation to stop this ethnic cleansing plan and policy that had been applied in Palestine from 1994 until now. So unfortunately, instead of gaining from the peace agreement that was signed, we lost what we had in our hands because of that agreement. Of course, the agreement was not meant to be so, but this is the mentality of the occupying power, is benefiting from this agreement to confiscate more land. Israel, as an occupying power, has shifted from the level of grabbing the land in 1994, bit by bit slowly, to the level of land confiscation, where they used to confiscate larger part of the land to expand settlements and deploy new settlers. And now they reached the level of land annexation, where the entire area C now, 60% of the entire West Bank area became almost a no-go area for Palestinian farmers and an open area for all settlers. And the new pastoral settlement movement with those top hill gangs, as they call them, top hill gangs, who are pastorals. They are given by their government, sheep and cows, and they receive financial support on daily basis. They go and they graze with these weapon guns, guns and weapons. And whenever they see any agriculture project for any Palestinian farmers, they either destroy or damage or kick out and, force farmers to leave their lands. This is the context under which Palestinian Farmers Union are working. So we're working hard to support the steadfastness and the resilience of our farmers in that land, to keep the identity of that land. It is a Palestinian land. It will remain a Palestinian land. And those who came shall leave one day. The question how long this will take and how much blood and flesh from our own blood and flesh as Palestinian farmers we will give until that occupation will be over. So we're trying to bring the issue of the farmers and access to land and natural resources into the international agenda. And, we can say that there are many solidarity movements around this world that are buying in our advocacy messages and advocacy asks we do about settler attacks and settler crimes against the Palestinian farmers under that context. Of course, maybe in the next question, I can tackle more on what settlers are doing, the current situation starting from October 7, 2023 until this moment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abbas. I think this was a great historical context, not only to the Union, but also to the struggle of the Palestinian people against this occupying force that is so-called State of Israel. So thank you so much for, clarifying that this struggle did not start at October 7th, but it's, dating over 100 years now against British occupying
Yes.
forces and now Israel and the U.S. So you already mentioned talking a little bit about the current situation. I think we would love to hear a little bit more. We know that there is a ceasefire declared that has been violated every day by Israel through bombings, through killings, through the occupation of the land and the annexation of even more land from the time of the ceasefire. And of course, the increased violence of the Israeli settlers. So if you want to talk a little bit about the situation after October 7th, 2023, and then the current situation with these ceasefire violations, we'd love to hear.
Yeah. As I just mentioned, the confiscation and the annexation of the land has always been a policy of the Israeli government since the past decades. It's not something that just started in one night in October 2023. However, what happened after 2023, after October 7, 2023, is that for the first time in the Israeli history, a government that is based and consisted of settler coalitions have been established. This is new. And those settler leaders who joined the government are the most extremist ones. On top of them were Ben-Gvir, who is the Minister of National Security, and Smotrich, who is the Minister of Finance. And those two ministers, they cooperated together and adopted officially and publicly the annexation plan and the control of the land and the water resources. The Ministry of Finance is financing settlers' attacks against Palestinian farmers by financing, they're giving them salaries on monthly basis. And just 2 weeks ago, the Ministry of Finance in Israel announced that every settler will get $550 every month as support for resilience for their, movement of attacking Palestinian farmers. And all the attacks these settlers are conducting in West Bank is under the full protection and coverage of the Israeli army, which is under the Ministry of National Security led by Ben-Gvir. So those two settlers are occupying the most important two ministries in the Israeli government that is relevant to confiscate the land and to control the land in the Palestinian situation. So while the genocidal war was occurring in Gaza, and that led to 300,000 between killed and injured people in Gaza, the 100% destruction of the entire food security there in Gaza, demolishing everything, killing alive and non-alive things in Gaza. Ethnic cleansing war was happening in West Bank from October 7 until now. We as a union, we were documenting the daily attacks of settlers against farmers. Before October 7, 2023, the average of settler attacks were 1 to 2 attacks per day. Now, from October 7 until now, we are documenting 11 to 13 attacks per day. And these attacks are not just, a provocative one. They are, bloody attacks. During these attacks, farmers are killed or injured, or houses destroyed or demolished. The water networks, the irrigation networks for agricultural projects were entirely, damaged by settlers. Olive trees that have been living since the past 500 trees, they were either cut off by settlers or burned. These olive groves that are, the dreams of all Palestinians were burned and were destroyed. Settlers and their government, they want the land they will confiscate to be empty from any presence of farmers. To emptify the land from farmers, all these attacks were conducted and still conducted against Palestinian farmers. For example, in the first olive harvest season in 2023, just like less than 1 month from October 7, 70% of Palestinian farmers in Palestine were unable to get access to their olive groves to harvest their olives. And just for you and for followers to know and understand the value of the olive sector in Palestine, it is the largest agricultural sector, where 150,000 families are living on the olive production or olive oil production. So denying the right for 70% of Palestinian farmers not to harvest their olive seasons, it was one of the big catastrophes. One of the big massacres against the holy olive trees. The olive tree for a Palestinian is very holy. Like when you pray to God, you respect and you look at the holy tree as a holy one. And most of farmers were unable to harvest. Not only this, even those who tried to get access to the land, like the farmer Bilal Saleh, for example, from a small town here in Assawiya town, that is like 35-minute driving from Ramallah to that town. This Bilal Saleh, a farmer, he was shot in cold blood with 7 bullets in his chest because he was harvesting his olives during the olive season. And he was killed in front of his kids and his wife. Can you imagine, kids seeing their father being killed? Until now, they are, suffering from many psychological problems. Not only Bilal Saleh, there are many Bilal Salehs that became like a story as long as we move from October 7 until now. Those who were killed while going to their land or while plowing their land, while looking after their, agriculture projects or vegetable production, and even those who were, attacked, the families, they were attacked during midnight by settlers just to terrify them, to force them to leave and to evacuate and emptify the land, so the land becomes like an easy hunt for confiscation and for annexation. From October 7 until now, there are 22,000 farming communities that were forcibly displaced by force by the Israeli settlers and the Israeli army from their farming communities in Jordan Valley in Area C to other areas, closer to Area B. If we calculate the number of olive trees that have been either uprooted or cut off or burned, we're talking about more than 35,000 olive trees that were entirely damaged. Most of our agricultural projects in Masafir Yatta in the south of Hebron and in Jordan Valley, this is part of Area C, is now becoming, a no-go area. 92% of the grazing area for livestock sector in the entire Jordan Valley area is becoming a grazing area only for settler pastorals. And this is really a big, the livestock sector in Palestine, before October 7, and let's say 4 years from now, we used to have in Palestine around 1,750,000 heads of goat and sheep. Due to these ongoing attacks against the livestock sector and forcibly displacement of livestock farmers, we only own less than 500,000 heads of sheep and goat. That put our food security and meat production under a very critical condition and very critical situation. Adding to that, even those livestock farmers who live in villages and towns in Area B, their sheep and their goats were subject to be theft by Israeli settlers who claims, and the soldiers, of course, they believe these claims, that these goat and sheep that belongs to them, and they just confiscate them and take them. We're talking about more than 5,000 sheep and goat that have been theft and stolen from livestock farmers only in 2026 years. So this made even the livestock sector for Palestinian farmers very challenging. Many were obliged and forced to sell out their cattle and sheep because they are unable to provide the protection needed. There is no protection provided for Palestinian farmers to encounter these attacks of the Israeli settlers who comes with their weapons and their M16 machine guns that were given to them by the Minister of National Security, Ben-Gvir minister, who said publicly and proudly that he distributed 175,000 M16 machine guns among settlers in West Bank. Those machine guns were used to conduct all the crimes and all attacks and to apply what we call the ethnic cleansing against land and farmers at the same time in West Bank. Now, what is called ceasefire in Gaza, you mentioned the ceasefire, did not go beyond the declaration itself. There is no ceasefire in reality. There was a declaration of ceasefire, but on the ground, there is no ceasefire. Every day, Israel attack, bomb, and kill Palestinians inside Gaza. All Palestinians, 2.1 million of Gazans, have no access to their land, and farmland area is still under the full control of the Israelis. And despite most of them are living, along the shore, the beach of Gaza, while the land, they are disconnected from their land and from their farmland areas. And adding to that, on daily basis, there are a number of people, of Gaza people, who are killed. Yesterday, there was a massacre. The day before yesterday, there was another massacre. And every day, there is a new massacre where Palestinians living in tents, trying to find peace, they are just bombed and killed without any, justification why they're doing that. So ceasefire still is, for us, it's a big lie. It's just, something that would make the world breathe out and feel relaxed that ceasefire has been reached and that the pressure and the advocacy and lobbying is not needed anymore. But on the ground and in reality, Gaza people are still under this daily attacks of the Israeli occupation, and ceasefire is still a dream that is not reached out yet. And in West Bank, more and more massacres have been conducted against Palestinians, and they didn't stop. And until today and yesterday and tomorrow, these massacres will continue as long as those settlers and the government that support them is not held accountable against all the crimes they are conducting. Those settlers, they feel immune against any trial system. There is no judiciary system that trial them. And there is no accountability for any crime those settlers, commit in West Bank. This opened the greedy and the appetite of settlers to conduct more and more attacks and more crimes. They have this impression, of course, and it is true, that they are immune against any trial system. They're not held accountable. They are paying no price for all the crimes they are doing. So what will stop them? The government is not doing anything. The international pressure is still, on the minimum level of pressure. So the appetite to conduct more and more crimes by these settlers is still there and will continue as long as the international movement for holding them accountable is not strong enough to stop them and stop their, appetite for crimes. What we need to see is exactly what happened to the South African apartheid regime when, due to the international boycott against that regime was toppled down. The same is needed against this government that is based on what they call ideas of apartheid and settlement expansion, which is all illegal according to all international laws, humanitarian law, international law, UN resolutions, and the constitutions of all countries in the world. This set of settlements and settler deployment is illegal. And if they are illegal, then there must be an intervention to stop these crimes and impose sanctions and banning systems on settlers and on the government that support them. Otherwise, what can stop their appetite for conducting more crimes?
That's right. They're really acting with impunity. The settlers, the Zionist state, all of the actors there, and getting away with it right now. We were wondering if you could talk a little bit on that note about how outside powers like Britain and the United States governments actually make it possible. How do they prop up and support the state of Israel so that they are able to act with impunity, politically, economically, militarily? If you could touch on that a little bit. And I think that also can help inform some of the solidarity that groups outside can do to help support the cause of the Palestinian people.
As we said, Randa, it is, those settlers, they feel immune by their government, but their government is feeling immune by the support of the U.S. government and the current U.S. administration, and actually the previous administration as well. Even during Joe Biden, who came here many times and he said, I am the first Zionist, and he's supporting, he provided full coverage for the Israeli government. So it's not only settlers who feel immune, but also the government itself is feel immune against any international pressure in the Security Council or the UN resolution because of the immunity system they are gaining from the open support from the U.S. administration. That for us they are partners and complicit in these crimes against in Palestine. And in my view, as a union, any country that does not take actions, not words, but actions, what is needed from the world now is actions against the occupation and against settlers and settler movement. Any country that does not take actions against the settlers and does not impose real sanctions and banning not only on settlers, but also on their government that support them, they are complicit in the crimes and complicit in all the types of the crimes these settlers are conducting. I know that some countries in the Western, world, like in some European countries, they took some actions against some settlers, Recently, for example, there were 20 settlers who were put on the blacklist and they were banned from entering any European country. Adding to them another like four civil society organizations that support settlement expansion and settlement, establishment of a new settlement. But this is not new. There is nothing called good settler and bad settler. All settlers are illegal according to the humanitarian and international law. So all settlers should be banned and all settlers should be sanctioned. All organizations that cooperate and coordinate and support the settlers should be under the blacklist. All private sector who doing trading with settlements and settlers should be on the blacklist and should be, banned. Any cooperation with the government that support and based on settler coalitions and supporting of settlers should be, banned. What if that happened in another country from the third world country, like in Syria or in Lebanon or in Iran or wherever? I mean, just, for us to compare this dual policy of the Israeli and, of course, the American administration. When this Ukrainian war occurred, from the first 2 weeks, all bans were imposed on Russia. Even Russian cats were not allowed to participate in, exhibitions and ceremonies in the world. All forms of banning and, cut off and sanctions were imposed on Russia. Why? Because Ukrainians, they have blue eyes and blonde hairs, like what the CNN correspondent at the time in Ukraine said, that those people are like us. They have blue eyes and blonde hair. But we all belong to the same God. If you say that what Russia is doing in Ukraine are crimes against Ukrainians, then Israel, what is doing here is crimes against Palestinians. If you give Ukrainians the right to defend themselves and fight for their freedom, why Palestinians are not allowed to fight? And if they even fight by words, they are described as terrorists or anti-Semitic. This is really weird and ironic from this system, from countries that claim that they are countries based on democracy and respect of human rights. But when it comes to non-Westerns, the whole issue, the whole principle of human rights and democracy has no function on there. Yes, what Israel is doing here cannot do it without the full immunity and support and coverage they're gaining from Western countries, on top of which is the U.S. and the silence of other European countries that did not until now, despite of all the crimes Israel has conducted. Genocide had been conducted in Gaza, and until this moment, there is no cut off of diplomatic relation with this regime. What you want to see more from them? You want them to see killing like 5 million Palestinians until you act? And supporting Palestinians by words does not serve and does not help. We have been receiving, letters of condemnation, letters of concerns, statements of concerns from the whole world about Israeli crimes for the past 75 years of this occupation, and words are not helping, because what they are doing on the ground are actions of crimes. And what the world should answer back to these actions of crimes by taking actions of sanctions and cutting off and banning. And without doing that, again, as I said, most of these countries are complicit with the crimes. And believe me, history will curse them one day. And people in these countries where solidarity movements are expanding, even the United States, as you may see, there is, a growing solidarity movement. Those people will reach the level one day with their power enough to topple down all these policies of their governments and to stand beyond and supporting humanity. After October 7, Randa, the whole world was split into two. Those who are standing with humanity and those who are complicit with crimes against humanity. And we hope to see the increase of this solidarity movement, not only for our right as Palestinians, but even for the values and the principles of human rights and democracy, humanity and humanity in general. There will be a strong movement in all countries that would bring back people to the track of respecting humanity and be supportive of this humanity and with the values of democracy and the human rights. By then, even we can start seeing a movement where peace as a hope that had been lost from all our minds and hearts might have a meaning in our hearts and in our minds, based on respecting our rights to exist as human beings and living as equal human beings with everyone, and with full sovereignty on our land and our agriculture, food security, and water resources. And then peace can have a meaning as a term on the ground.
That's right. It gets down to just the basic things that all peoples have the right to, our right to self-determination, our right to live in peace, our right to sovereignty, and land and water are really at the heart of that. And so it's so good to hear about this this fight that you all are facing, and how the whole world really needs to be on the right side, as you said. No, there is no justification for people being on that other side of the line. We earlier, well, actually last year in November, Resist U.S.-led war was part of a International People's Tribunal on Palestine. And in that tribunal, we convicted the United States and the State of Israel and complicit governments, especially in Europe, of genocide and ecocide. So really the deliberate destruction of the land and the water and all systems that are needed in order to support life. And it's one of the things that we hope to contribute to building this movement in solidarity with Palestine, to do the advocacy that you're calling for example, and try to actually pressure governments to finally take action and not just speak in words. We would like to know more about, how is it on the ground that the Palestinian people build the resistance, and how do Palestinian farmers that you're working with still find ways to grow the food, to employ their agricultural systems in order to survive, and assert their right to grow the food and have food security and sovereignty, so that the Palestinian people can continue. So if you can tell us a little bit more about what it looks like in the work that you do on the ground.
Agricultural farming action in Palestine is not just an action. It's an issue of existence and even survival. An Oma farmer, whether a male or a female, whether Fatima or whether Abu Sakr as a male farmer, When he leaves the house and go to his farm, he doesn't know whether he will come back that day or not. But he has this strong belief in the heart that this is his land and he will continue going there, despite of all the risks he will face. Many were beaten many times. Many farmers were beaten many times by settlers, and they were tied up behind the back, their hands, and they will live in their farmland areas for like almost a whole day. Despite that, they go back every day. This is their land. This is their right. This is their honor. You know, land for Palestinians is an honor. So keeping and protecting the land is in the bloods of every single Palestinian farmers. Yes, of course, this is not easy to say and mention because it's like, you know, the action is bloody action. When they go, for example, let me give you an example of myself. I am an olive farmer. I have olive farms in my town. Yes, I live in Ramallah and they are in my town, far in the Jenin area. But, you know, the family that work in my farmland area and they harvest, they were beaten 4 times during the olive harvest season. 4 times. And when I say 4 times, it was the husband, the wife, and the kids. And can you imagine psychological, you know, aspect of those kids seeing their father being beaten and smashed to the ground and tied up by an olive tree the entire day, and they're, you know, just screaming. They are kids, you know, they don't understand what's going around them. And it is really hectic, you know. I mean, it is speechless. Words cannot describe those. It's not one single farmer. This is applied to so many farmers. Despite all this, farmers are resisting by insisting on going back to their land every day. And with those farmers, we as a union, we try to provide them with what we can provide, resources. For example, when they harvest the olive season, instead of staying 20 days doing manual harvesting, we provide them with semi-machinery harvesting, you know, devices. So instead of spending 20 days harvesting, they finish the harvesting in 5 days. And that would minimize their exposure to attacks by settlers, you know, to the minimum level. And second, instead of going individually to harvest or to go to your land to plow or look to your farmland area, we organized farmers in collective harvesting and collective farming. And by doing this, we provide a level of security. You know, it's not that easy for a group of 30 or 40 farmers to be attacked by a group of 5 settlers, even if they have machine guns. That will make, you know, that will minimize the level of that risk. Although it is still risky, and some of them were injured, but compared to those who going individually in their land and can be an easy hunt for settler attacks, either killing or arresting or whatever. So when they go in collective harvesting or collective, let's say, plowing or whatever is really helpful. So the journey of a farmer on a daily basis to the land is, and allow me to say this, is like the journey of pain of Christ when he was crossed from Jerusalem to wherever. I'm sorry, you know, it's not, you know, the same words, but I mean, it's the journey of pain for every single farmer. Before, farming was a family ceremony issue where all the families, elderly, I mean the grandfather and the grandmother, the husband and the wife, with all their kids, they spend the whole day in their farmland areas. They cook their food during that day on fire, and they prepare tea on fire and coffee, enjoying, celebrating, singing. It used to be joyful days for farmers. Now, as I said, it's the journey of pain. But even when it is a journey of pain, it deserves, this is the impression, this is what our farmers believe, despite how painful it is, it deserves because it is holy. And we're trying as much as we can to support as much as we can the resilience of our farmers in their land and bringing them back to track in their farmland areas. When their projects are destroyed, we try to compensate them if we have the resources to bring them back to the track of production again. And this is what I call resistance under occupation. We're not resisting by machine guns. We don't have, and this is not our, mandate. But we resist by cultivating a tree. And for those settlers, cultivating a tree is like having an F-35, aircraft, a military one. But this is our weapon. We are farmers. Our people are our arms. When we cultivate the land, we look after and we continue on doing what we know and what we believe in, producing food, living from what we produce and feeding others to make living for our families. Despite all the pains, we will remain here and they will leave one day. I don't know how much it will take, how much time it will take, but we have this deep belief that they do not belong here and they will leave one day. They don't belong to this land.
Thank you so much, Abbas. I think I've known so many people that have been touched by the Palestinian struggle and are now dedicating their life to fighting imperialism and Zionism. And I think these stories that you just shared and this whole interview is just such a great reminder why the Palestinian struggle and the Palestinian people and their fight touch so many people, and how this is one of the definitive struggles of our lifetime. So just wanted to thank you, and yeah, see if there is any ways that you see people around the world having meaningful solidarity with Palestine, what people can do to support the Palestinian Farmers Union, but yeah, the broader struggle as well.
My friend Victor, if you don't know, I don't blame you if you don't know. But once you know and you stay silent, I blame you and blame your humanity, your set of values and principles. When you transmit this broadcast for the people, and there are many people now in the world who know now about the situation in Palestine, but what we expect from them is doing and taking actions. Because if they do not do as human beings with their human brothers in Palestine, then we can't blame them. There is no value of believing in concepts and principles if you do not fight for them. And there are many things those people can do as individuals, as organizations, as decision makers, and even as governmental bodies. From citizens, I mean, they can talk, they can make actions, they can pressure their governments to impose sanctions and actions against this regime in Israel. They can contribute financially, even with a small amount of money. That will help. Small things can make big differences. Yes, we as a union, yes, we need financial support from people around this world, from institutions, from donors, because we want to support the resilience of our farmers and help them stay where they are there and bring hope back for those who are under the direct attacks of the Israeli settlers. Yes, but we want political support from movements in the world, from media in this world, from political parties in this world, from decision makers, from parliamentarians. This regime can be toppled down only with this boycott from the world against this, most extremist and criminal regime in modern history. This genocide that occurred in Gaza is unique in this history. No crimes reach that level of attacking, just demolishing everything in Gaza. Even denying food from entering medicine and everything in Gaza is never happened. Even in the Nakba days, it wasn't like this. But the reaction from the world until now, sorry to say, it's still shy and embarrassing. It's not what we expected. We expect more and more from people. I hope people who will elect leaders, whether in the U.S. now in the Congress, or in any other elections in European countries and Western countries, they really bring leaders who work and determine to hold this occupation accountable by taking actions against them. Working together, taking actions together will bring the end of this occupation. If we want peace, and we all dream for peace, there is no peace with a government that is destroying all the values and the principles of peace in this world. Peace can only happen once this occupation ends, once settlers and settlement goes back to where they belong and leave the land owned by Palestinian farmers for the real owners and the indigenous groups in this country. No peace can occur with settlements, settlers, and occupiers, unfortunately.
That's right. And the occupation is a call that we all need to take up, and we need to fight. We need to fight for that peace around the world. We'll fight with our governments.
We will continue.
That's right. That's right. We'll continue the struggle. Thank you so much, Abbas, for joining us today in this podcast. Do you have any final words for us before we close?
Thank you. And really, I mean, what you are doing is very, very important because you're bringing this voice to the whole world, where we rely on you to make this voice being heard by a larger and larger audience, to reach the level of being, strong advocates for the humanity and the humanitarian, stand with the Palestinians, to reach the level of imposing the pressure we expect on governments that would really take actions against occupiers and change the regimes in this world that still believing that Zionism and imperialism can be a solution. They are the problem.
That's right. Thank you. Let's end the occupation. Let's end Zionism. Let's smash imperialism, and let's free the people. Thank you so much to our guest today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you to Abbas Milhem with the Palestinian Farmers Union today for our podcast, Counterattack by the Resist U.S. Led War Movement. To see our other episodes and to learn more about Resist, you can go to resistusledwarmovement.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.